The boys are back in town, or whatever you want to call it. Myself, Samson Folk, with my co-host Trevon Heath. He's joined me to talk about draft prospects, which is almost the genesis of like I would lean on Trey for draft
Whoa.
advice prior to the inception of Pull Up Trey podcast. And then once we finally got to talk about draft guys, we talked about a lot last year. We actually
Mm-hmm.
ended up getting the Raptors pick, Grady Dick. We're here to talk about 6 draft prospects. But before we do so, we're going to talk about what position the Raptors are in heading into the draft. And basically, I think it's a very wide position. I'm typically a person who goes best player available above all else with less considerations for fit. Of
Yeah.
course, that matters more these days because fit and play style is more complex than ever. But before we get into any of that, Trey, how are you? Have you done an 8K run recently?
Well, I've through my old age, I've realized a couple of things. One, you guys might notice something different about me. Just like LeBron, I'm past my
Right.
physical prime, and I need some enhancements on my end. And just like running is not for me. I'm an inside body. Like I'm not this outdoorsy man,
Hmm.
and I'm okay with that.
The glasses are real cute, man. It's a real wholesome look.
That's not what I'm going for though. I'm trying to be sophisticated, but everyone keeps saying like, "Oh, you look like a good boy."
Yeah, you could be cute and sophisticated, I think. Like I don't know, there's somebody who's been that. Maybe you'll be the first.
I don't know.
Well, we'll rely on some of that sophistication. The Raptors are in a position where they get to draft at 19 and 31. Maybe they'll have a decent pick next year, but basically, the modus operandi is built around Scotty Barnes. You're building around Scotty Barnes with, let's say, Jakob Pertl, Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, and Grady Dick, considered part of the core, if not because of how important they are, how much they're paid. What are you looking for in this draft?
See, I'm a person that relies on probably best player available. But this is the one of the true times where like the Raptors core fits and that philosophy align. Like if you remember the end of year interviews, they mentioned backup big, a point guard, maybe a wing. That could be literally any position on the entire team. So I think what you're looking for is connectivity. Right now, the Raptors have an issue with their core pieces where defensively, it's hard to make a lineup together where you can keep them all on the court. And if you can get someone a guard who can defend at the point of attack and makes things a bit easier for lineups where you have Grady or Emmanuel Quickly on the court, or sometimes even together, or a potential wing that can also provide the necessary spacing while also defending to make an RJ and Scotty lineup be defensively tenable. Because right now, with a lot of the games, like they scored in the half court at probably at a better clip than I expected them to, but defensively those lineups just didn't work.
I think that I would probably opt for, to shore those things up, signings. The last
Mm,
time we recorded a podcast, we talked about D'Anthony Melton. He's going to be so vaunted in free agency. I think it's like tough for the Raptors to nab him, especially with where they are. I'm sure he wants to be on a good winning team, right? But I think it's easier to look there with known things rather
mm,
than to try and draft somebody who fits. I think the
yeah.
best player available approach works so well because players grow in such unique and different ways. Klay Thompson, for example, everybody thought he would be a good shooter, but he was an all defense level defender for like 6 years of his career. And that wasn't an expected outcome, but it was one that the Golden State got to consider and build around. And I think that even like Karl Anthony Towns is a good example. He shot 0.2 3-pointers per game at Kentucky and will go down. Some people will say Dirk probably, but Cat by the numbers will go down as one of the greatest 3-point shooting bigs of all time. It's tough to guess how guys will develop. So purchase known things and bet on big things, I think is kind of the approach. With that being said, we can talk about some guys. Unless you have any other thoughts about how this team building stuff kind of goes.
I think probably the one facet is what type of big do you want around
Sure.
Scotty? Do you see we've seen two facets of that. One being a passing hub similar to Jakob Pertl, a guy who can stay in the lane, feed and help other guys around it. Kelly operates in the same way as well. or do you, if you truly value Scotty as this 50 possessions a game, he's your point guard, he's running pick and rolls, navigating the defense in the half court, then maybe potentially you want someone that could vertically like probably accentuate his passing and also put pressure on the rim to alleviate some of the challenges of getting to the rim. But like with him, I think you still need to see like probably a larger sample size of making like a delineated decision on that.
Yeah. And even to that point, I've argued this end of things before that I think Jakob complements Scotty quite well. And Jakob in particular complements Emmanuel quickly. Now, you and I are both like, Emmanuel quickly might not be, if you view the Raptors as winning a championship with Scotty in the middle of everything, Emmanuel may or may not be on that team.
Yeah.
Like he hasn't shown himself to be so unbelievably important. He's not incredibly young. He's younger. The team is younger now than it was, but it might grow in different ways. But I think the Emmanuel quickly plus Jakob fit is really quite good as is. I think that Scotty is good at making like the pocket pass read to Jakob. I think Jakob is good at carving out space. And I think honestly, like carving out that space to get Scotty downhill and letting Scotty make the, whether it's a pocket pass, the little shovel pass, whether he's going up, bringing two to him and making the overhead pass to Jakob. I think that's more important than, let's say, having like a brush screen and slip into space type of
Mm.
guy like maybe Claxton. Even though Claxton in a vacuum, he can go head to head with Jakob, sure. But I think stylistically, Jakob is better for the players on the team. He'll help facilitate some stuff. But, intelligent people can disagree. Here's the first guy you want to talk about. As I've said before, as I say anytime we talk about draft guys, I go and watch. However, I lean on the expertise of my pals, my friends, Jaylon Tyson, a junior out of Cal, 6'7", 210. The numbers 19.6 points, 3.5 assists, 6.8 boards, 46% from the field, 37% from three across all of college, and a really healthy volume the last 2 years. Pretty big
Yeah.
last season. What is the elevator pitch for Jaylon Tyson?
I think heading into, I think the playoff run, just like the last couple, is like pretty obvious of what you're looking for those like tertiary role players. A lot of those guys are people that have had those bigger roles in college and have been able to scale down around another star. But when they're asked to score in a pinch, they're able to do so. You guys like Dallas is a big reason why they're able to actually make it is that when Luka passes the ball, Kyrie is able to do something with the ball. Jaden Hardy was able to do stuff with the ball. And even Derek Lively, when he gets the ball, was able to make passing decisions, finish at the rim, and actually put pressure on Minnesota. I
Even
think,
PJ, the
yeah, that is
attacking
true.
closeouts, PJ was quite strong, I thought.
Yeah, and I think we're past the like. I think the talent level is too high, and defenses are too good to have standstill players be your primarily your big minute players. Like you can have your Sam Hausers that play 10 to 15 minutes, and maybe that scales up higher in the regular season. But you want someone that can do stuff with the ball, and Jaylon Tyson can do a lot with the ball. He fits that to a T. He has a really creative handle. He gets to the rim fairly often. He's shown that he's able to shoot off movement, different footworks, and able to actually accentuate some of his passing as well. While I think the efficiency is not necessarily ideal because he had a really huge role in Cal, he's that player where you see those Caleb Martins, you see those Jaden Hardys who had those particular roles, able to actually scale down. If you give him a closeout, he's going to be able to attack the rim, and that's uh, two steps and a mid range jumper. That's getting to the rim and then putting pressure on the defense and then dumping it off to your big. If you're going to build around Scotty, you want people to be able to do a lot of those things within the half court because he's not necessarily a player that's like a John Morant that's going to get 2 feet all the way into the rim. You want to be able to get those slight advantages so that your tertiary players around them can exploit and extend those advantages and then lead to points.
So what I'm seeing that makes me wonder,
Yeah.
because when you see something, it can both be good and bad, kind of.
Yeah.
So for example, he plays at one speed, I find, And when he gets slowed down or is like meets that opposing force, he goes to bully ball. And on the one hand, I really like players who problem solve with physicality. And on the other hand, he's playing college players. How much of that physical problem solving will be present at the next level is something I wonder about. But to your point, playing out of continuous motion in a second side pick and roll, he's very comfortable. Coming out of handoffs, if they're running delay action, very comfortable. Will turn the corner and is quick getting to the rim if he gets the edge. Now, if somebody steps out on him, it's going to be a pound dribble, shoulder, and he's going to try and finish high with the right hand. That's what I saw most often. A unique thing about him, too, is that I thought he was pretty slick as an interior passer. And that's like whether it's coming down, dribbling with the left hand, coming down, dribbling with the right hand, whether it's throwing a lob or a shovel pass, in motion, he's able to make reads against the low man. Those reads, I don't think it didn't manifest in inside outside playmaking a lot, which is kind of like, you're talking about not having, or you're talking about Dallas and Boston. A lot of these guys go inside to outside playmaking, a lot of like turning the defense around like that. I didn't see a lot of that from him, but he did like it was very interesting to see a guy who is good passing on the interior in motion. And especially if he's a guy who's going to be comfortable with the physicality, you wonder if there's maybe room for him to progress and grow for a guy who sees the game pretty well, at least navigating those interior looks, slowing the game down, getting to a bully drive, and making plays from there. We watched Pascal and Scotty do it for years. He's very interesting. I saw more like basically you try and watch a game, you try and
Yeah.
watch two games, you watch highlights. That's for people who aren't draft scouts, that's scouting. Anybody listening to this podcast, probably that's what you did too. You watch a little bit more college basketball than I do. So you would have just seen more tape. The defensive side of the ball. Is there anything there?
That part is probably a bit more shaky. I think he can be a really good team defender. He's fairly long and really good size, but laterally he doesn't have the foot speed to be that point of attack fender that you want. I think the pitch with him is that he's able to sustain. He's able to sustain within lineups. Maybe he's coming off the bench in during his rookie contract, and if he's able to provide that punch or come and plug and play within some of the starting lineups and extend those advantages and able to score at a decent clip, that's how he's going to get minutes. I don't necessarily see him, and fairly throughout the draft classes in general. The guys that can defend can't shoot. The guys who can shoot can't really defend. But for him, I think being an average defender would be a massive win for him, and he becomes a 20-25 minute player.
He the 3-point shot looks good to me. Very repeatable, very simple motion. I think, you talked about the guys who can defend can't shoot, the guys who can shoot can't defend. We will talk about Ryan Dunn in another episode. I we did. I put out a tweet asking, and I think there were like I think it was 47 different players were mentioned. They're like, I thought it would be. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought in past years usually it's like a spread of maybe like
Yeah.
there's 16 to 20 players, but this draft is so flat that like anybody can get it. Everybody kind of likes something about one guy. Like Dadiet, we're going to talk about later in this podcast. He's kind of similar to Bilal in that there's so much dead air in his games. There's just not a lot going on. But but you watch the highlights and the highlights are crazy. Like
Yep.
big highlights. So there's a lot to sort through, but we're going to go from Jaylon down to Tristan Da Silva, a senior out of Colorado, 6'8", 200 pounds, 16 points, 5 boards, 2.5 assists, 49% field goal his last 2 seasons, 38% from three across college with big volume the last 2 seasons. He's more of a highlights block guy than an actual rim deterrent because if you watch his highlights, you're going to see a lot of these sweeping backline plays or like where he tracks a guy's feet, meets him at the rim.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily real. However, I like he and Jaylon kind of being stacked 1 and 2 because they both shoot the three quite well. They both get into the lane, but they're completely different players. They are like Jaylon Tyson attire, Tristan Da Silva attire. You and I are very differently dressed for this podcast. The approach is very different. I have thoughts about Tristan, but I'm curious what your, I guess, early thoughts are.
Yeah, Tristan is one of my draft crushes. I would say. He's a guy that provides a lot of versatility. He can shoot off of movement. You can throw him off of screens, and then he can come off of those screens, and he has good enough passing field to hit the opposing big. The finishing stuff, I think probably needs to work on. I don't think you're expecting him to probe
He's
past the
slim,
screen.
slim
Yeah,
guy.
you're not expecting him to probe past the screen and being able to finish over contact through bigs, but he's like shown like enough creativity where he can hit pull up jumpers. And if you have a guy that you can cross match and play either at the 3 or the 4, and is able to switch onto other guys and defend, able to provide those actual spacing and still extend advantages, you can create like some really funky lineups where if you want to experiment with Scotty at the 5 and you slip in Da Silva at the 4, you still have decent enough size where both of those guys can defend against other bigs, but you're giving Scotty the requisite shooting because you're having guys that are flying around him and he can be the hub to necessarily do what he wants. I think he's a guy that provides impact probably year one just because he does everything right. He's been a good shooter all throughout college, so I would be shocked if he wasn't able to shoot fairly well. Um, and he fits what the Raptors want to do. He's not a standstill guy. He makes decisions fairly quickly, and he's really good at processing. So he would be a guy that you give 15 to 20 minutes year one, and you're happy with probably what you're getting at 19 or whether that's 31.
He's pretty slick. I
Yeah,
was surprised to see that he was a senior. Because when you look at the body, he's a
yeah,
pretty slim guy, and I was like, hmm. Then when I went to like go collect all the information, I by the way, if anybody's listening, if there's infographics on the podcast, you're welcome. If there isn't infographics, please comment, Samson, you're lazy, because it may or may not happen. I'm not sure. Um, but he looked like I was like, I wonder how he'll fill out going into the NBA, and I wonder how that factors into stuff because players who look like him do find success, but it is really, really dependent on finesse, like a lot of
hmm
the time. What you said about playing next to Scotty De Silva, I thought had a pretty good knack for slot cuts, split action, like sliding into space, and basically what I'm talking about when I say he and Jaylon are so different in approach. Jaylon Tyson is a guy who one speed, as I said before.
yeah,
Tristan Da Silva is like 7 speeds. I really love players, especially shot makers who can do that. A lot of non-shooters are pretty good at getting like keeping the dribble alive, getting horizontal, going vertical, getting horizontal again. But Tristan Da Silva is like will get into the paint, the top of it, will keep his dribble alive and stay in one spot, assess, survey.
yeah,
And so while he's not a super strong finisher, a lot of his finishes are from the product of freezing a defense while he keeps his dribble alive. Because it's tough to guard a guy with that size in the middle of the court with a live dribble. We see Scotty do this all the time, although Scotty has the burliness to go on top
beefy
of
boy.
that. But De Silva will keep a live dribble and slowly move his way towards the rim, and then all of a sudden, like if the defense responds poorly, they shade somewhere else. It's just a quick gather and a finish. It's not like these hard charging finishes over contests, but it's like players who put themselves in strong positions leave themselves easy shots. I wondered about this for years and years and years watching DeMar DeRozan, who everyone told me was such an elite athlete, and James Harden was a fat slob, was kind of like that's how they're portrayed. And James Harden keeps getting to the rim for wide open layups, and DeMar DeRozan every layup is like a war zone he has to get to. I'm like, why is this happening? And it's because of the process of setting up the lower half of the defense. Tristan Da Silva, at least at the college level, I quite liked how he did that.
Mhm.
And the shot making, like there's a floater there, there's a comfortable pull up, he shoots the three, and it's that live dribble, keep it alive, survey, push dribble, collect, finish in the bucket. It's pretty nifty work. And I think with Jaylon and with Tristan, the two big things, I expect both of those guys to shoot the three at the NBA level.
Yeah.
That's important. And Tristan, with the cutting, just watching these two guys, I know Tristan is older. I think I observed Tristan to be the higher upside player.
Mm,
And Jaylon, maybe we disagree a little bit about the higher end of his handle. Maybe that's why.
yeah.
But Jaylon, the body is just like way more ready, despite
Yeah.
being the younger guy. That's really what I wonder out about between these two players, these two wings slash forwards that the Raptors could possibly entertain pairing with Scotty and RJ and Quickly and Grady and Jakob.
I view I view Da Silva as like a can't miss fit who's going to. I'd be pretty surprised if he wasn't good at the NBA. Where I view Tyson as probably more of a swing, and maybe it's the handle stuff. He gets the spots fairly well, and most of his buckets at the rim are unassisted. For you, I guess, do you see that being him winning with strength too often against these smaller guys? And it not translating to the NBA, like how like Johnny Davis like immediately struggled.
That kind of is it's what I brought up like during the Jalen talk is like I don't know if this is a really good thing, which it could be.
Yeah,
Hawkes, for example, is a guy who beat up, bullied, and bashed college players.
yeah,
And then he was slick enough, crafty enough, and strong enough to take it to the next level. And he was quicker making decisions with the Heat than he was at UCLA. He kind of everything coalesced into one thing, and he shot the three well. That could happen for Jalen. Not that it's not a one-to-one Jalen versus Hawkes. Hawkes is more highly regarded as well. And I
yeah.
think just the self-creation inside the arc from Hawkes is higher quality than Jalen at the time of the draft anyway. And presumably in the rookie season, well, Hawkes was awesome. But yeah, Tristan, because of the cutting sense,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder with the body, like how often he snakes through spaces, how often he's able to bulldoze through spaces, how often he's able to get checked at the line, like all this kind of stuff I wonder about. But Tristan, I think the upside goes fairly high, but that's kind of where I'm at. The defense we talked about, like these big swing blocks that he comes for. Outside of that, you talked about like Scotty at the five. Obviously, we don't view Tristan as a guy who's guarding up really, but
Yeah.
guarding fours, stepping out on threes. What is your sense there?
I think on a switch he can guard wings. Like if you want to switch all five, I'd be comfortable with him towards the end of a shot clock having to defend your opposing wing. I don't think you want him chasing anyone on the Boston Celtics for 40 minutes a night. But he's in the tweener sense where certain fours he just simply can't guard. You wouldn't want him guarding a Julius Randle. He's I think a chess piece that he where he's playing is just really dependent upon the lineup that you're facing, just because of how slim he is. But he's a really smart team defender. He knows where to actually be. And while I don't think he's the athlete where you're asking him to be like the sweeper within your defense, he can at least get there and be a deterrent. And he's not going to kill you by being onto the court. So um, I think the defense is going to be passable. And in a similar sense, or where Kyle Anderson, while not being a great athlete, can be a really good defender, he has he has the feel to be able to probably push some lineups into better defense.
So I was wondering who would be the first one to do it. The devil on my shoulder was like, make the Kyle Anderson comp. And I wanted to, but I refrained. I was wondering if you were going to do it. Moving on to Kel'el Ware. So, sophomore out of Indiana. If you want a longer conversation, myself and Jack Quantrill talked about Khalil. I just want to allow Trey to kind of like make his pitch, and then between the two, there's a lot of Kel'el Ware talk on the podcast. But Kel'el Ware, for anybody who doesn't know the stats, 16 points per game, 10 boards, 1.5 assists, 58% from the field, 42% from three, but that is small volume. A reminder, 63% from the free throw line, lots of free throws. So low 3-point volume, lots of free throws though. He gets fouled. He's a physical presence. If you've been watching Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford and you're like, wow, I like a guy who can go up and get it, there's stuff there. Trey, Kel'el Ware, thoughts?
I'm a big Ware fan. Love the name. First of all, I'm a big Superman guy. But
Well, that's
never mind.
isn't it like it's Kal-El versus
Yeah, never mind.
Khalil.
It didn't hit. It didn't hit. So, but
You like Superman?
yeah, I like Superman. Like
Is that the glasses inspiration? Clark Kent over
I
there.
can't see. That's the inspiration. Okay, but I think in terms of like philosophy, I prefer having bigs that put pressure on the rim, simply because within the playoffs,
You
you're
watch too much Freddie Gillespie and Kem Birch. It hurts your
oh
feelings,
man,
man.
those floaters, oh lord. But the when you're in the playoffs, you're facing more set defense and getting to the rim becomes more finite. You need guys that are able to put defense in rotation and think about tagging in pick and roll. And I'm not asking Scotty Barnes to be Luka Doncic. I'm not asking any player to be Luka Doncic, but Minnesota had such a hard time defending him simply because they either had to decide if they're giving up the lob or they're giving up a possession at the rim, and either or really wasn't a great decision. And if you had a different type of big, they would have had a much easier time defending him. I think with Khalil, he's arguably one of the best athletes, if not the best athlete in the entire draft. He's long. He has really good touch. He gets to the rim when he's asked to, and he gets to the line. I think for him, it's a matter of does he have the frame to be your long term five? Because that's where you're going to get most of the offensive upside. If you have a big that can stretch the floor, you open up everything for your entire team and change the function of how a defense plays. While I don't think he's going to be a 40% shooter, I think he's going to be someone that's probably streaky and is anywhere between like 33 to like 35, which is still fairly valuable if he's shooting 4 or 5 threes a game. With Khalil, I simply view him as a run and jump big, but that when he's in a pinch, he can also post up. I think towards the end of the season, his post up numbers were a lot more effective. He was getting to the line a lot more and is able to score in that function. If you're able to, if someone decides to switch that and now he's onto a small, that's a quick dump off to him and he's able to exploit that and score. I think both offensively and defensively, if he develops correctly, um, the Raptors are in a position where you find probably the best of both worlds of what you're looking for, like a really good athlete besides Scotty and someone that can space the floor, which is like fairly rare and fairly unique within the league, which is why I would want to bet on that.
Is there at these three selections, at potential selections in 19 between Jaylon, Tristan, and Khalil, in what's considered a flat draft, do you think the Raptors have a chance, as many teams do every single year, around between like 19 to 30? Do you think they have a chance to select one of the five best players from this draft in a few years?
Yes, yeah. The draft is so flat that you can make a case for someone that's going to go 31 to go within the lottery, to be honest. And I think we're going to be fairly surprised by how it shakes out. Some people that we probably thought were going to go lotto are probably going to go towards the end of the draft. I think the Raptors are going to probably have a couple guys that we didn't think were going to be there be available. And I think the way that they play also um, allows for tertiary guys to develop and grow a lot easier than in other places. So I think it's possible.
I wonder. Like Topic, I know people. It's kind of funny. This is the state of basketball in the
Yeah.
NBA. If you had said like in even like 2010,
Yeah.
2012, a guy had a partially torn ACL, that's really bad news. Everyone's really worried about that.
Yeah.
People hear that, all of a sudden, nobody cares. Every fan base is like, "Ooh, maybe he falls to us." But then the thing that really worried people that nobody would have gave a shit about back then is they're like, "Oh, his arms are shorter than they said." Everyone's like, "Oh, Jesus, man, this is terrible." Kind of funny. We're gonna pivot to the 31st pick. The that the Raptors will, the whole NBA will come to heel before the in the night between the drafts, they'll be courting so many. They'll have like in NBA 2K. Not that
Yeah,
I've played it recently, but when I had played it, you'd be like franchise mode, and you'd be like, I want to see if people will trade for like this guy, and you
yeah.
get like 27 trade offers. That's what's gonna happen. The Raptors would just put a feeler out like, who wants Bruce Brown anyway? Is there 27 offers? We have like a book, like a leaflet to flip
Yes,
through. Ajay Mitchell, Jr. out of UCSB, the Gauchos,
yep.
6'4", 180, 20 points per game, 4 boards per game, 4 assists per game, 50% from the field, 39% from three, but on pretty small volume. However, a lot of those are self-created or off the bounce, I should say. 86% from the free throw line with lots of volume. To my eye, by the statistics, one of the best drivers in the country. Pressure, 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 pressure. Ajay Mitchell, what's the sell?
He would be a guy I would reach for. Like if you were at 31 and you think he's gonna get drafted at 25, I would trade up for him. But I think the Raptors really
Using what instrument? How do you get up? How do you move up? What's the move?
there's a guy with a cowboy hat that probably doesn't want to be a Raptor that
Hey, go!
I would probably
Wait,
use.
you think he can only move up from 31 to 26? I thought you could trade Bruce Brown for Herder and move up from 19 to 12. I thought Bruce Brown was a stud.
Man, I went to that Chicago game, his first game. I saw the dream. They were playing well. He was cutting off a Scotty. I'm like, this is Jokic and Bruce Brown all over again, and it just fell on its head immediately. But
We were both at that game actually.
yes, well, I mean, you're the big cheese, you're big honcho. Of course, you're
Jesus
there.
Lord, that's enough. That's enough out of you.
But AJ Mitchell, I think, is probably one of the best organizers in the draft. You can ask him.
Organizers.
I know,
You're gonna pay for that one. I'm just
but he's a guy you could ask to go and pick and roll and make the progressive reads that you need. I think one of the big changes with having darker heroes, obviously, the importance of like your point guard or your processor in his offense is fairly important. And right now, the Raptors don't necessarily have that. You saw with just like how forced Emmanuel quickly was within those positions where they were running pick and roll again and again and again, and you weren't getting the look that you wanted. I think with AJ, he has the size and strength to one finish over contact, get to those spaces with bumps in a similar sense of like maybe like an Andrew Nemhard who isn't necessarily the quickest guard in the world, but can get to his requisite spots with his strength, and he's able to to pass in a way that will help some of the athletic cutters that we have, like a Baji, for example. Even Scotty, he's an amazing cutter. Guys like that, if he's able to organize the offense around it, he does fairly well. And I think the shooting is going to hold up off of movement. There, he self creates from his threes significantly. He's able to work off the ball as well. He's a guy that can both, I think, scale up if you hit on that pick a lot, and also if he stays at a fairly similar level, scale down in a way that he's a really good role player that can even play off the ball as well. I I think it's a rare chance to get like a guy with I think a fairly decent floor at that pick that has the chance to potentially be a starter on your team if you hit on it.
his driving game is super super impressive.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different shots he makes from the left side because he's a left-handed guard. Big shout out to left-handed guards. He different speeds. He can beat guys to the glass. He has different release points for his floater off the glass. There's a lot he does there. He also has the thing I constantly joke about, like, how come at the combine they don't measure guys' deceleration on their last step to get to the opposite side of the rim? He does that.
Yeah.
That's one of his best moves, and he's pretty competent finishing on his weak hand. That big left-footed last step, kind of letting the guy push past, getting to the other side. It's like he's pretty slick there, and we talk about Andrew Nemhard. Andrew Nemhard is pretty good at the interior to exterior passes. We talked about guys who don't make those passes. AJ Mitchell is a guy. If the Raptors want to be a team that plays in continuous motion, want to be a team that is drive and kick, point five basketball. AJ punches middle. If he gets the movement he wants, if he gets that rotation from the corner, he always finds the corner man. And if they get that drift or that X out to the corner, he finds the guy above the break. Pretty good.
Yep.
And he does get downhill. And I think it's easy to see him being a guy who gets downhill at the NBA level. Maybe not at the same level now, but he has size. He's quick. He's physical. The 3-point shot, maybe I'm not as sold on it as you are, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was good. Like,
Yeah.
not in the slightest. I'm You can see he's made a few lob passes in his time. He's made a couple of the shovel passes where, like, you go to the baseline and you make the wrap pass. I think he's mostly an interior to exterior guy, but
Mhm.
the thing I wonder about with a lot of guards who have the volume and the accolades at the college level is how much of the ball are they going to get? And how do they make use of that? I think in a Raptors offense, as you said, that's fairly equal opportunity, that they run a ton of delay action, that they run a ton of horns, that they're constantly running out of these like movement sets. I think there's a lot of opportunities for a guy like AJ to like step in and operate out of those with advantage, getting steps towards the paint or in the paint. I think there's a lot of utility for a guy like that in the Raptors offense if he shoots the three.
Yeah. That that's the big bet. I don't think like defensively because Andrew Demhart's three-point shot like hasn't gotten to a level where it's like super consistent.
It was
But
great in the playoffs, and
I
it
can't.
was trending up. However,
Yeah.
he had those daggum kidney stones that really threw him for a loop, man.
I still cannot believe he hit that shot. It was at game three. Well, I literally yelled they lost the game and it splashed. But with his defense, I think a lot of it is him being able to use his size and his strength and being able to push within the defense and push within the actual middle. I don't think you're gonna ask him to chase and be your point of attack guy on most people. You'd probably in a similar sense of the Manuel Cook, you want him to be the person defending off of the ball, which I think he
So,
can do.
do you think there's a natural partnership there then for him to play with Ochai off the bench?
Yes, I I think he Abaji's like a super great cutter. 3-point shot. Hopefully,
He's not
hopefully
a good finisher though. Like like how many times I watched Ochai
dunks
Abaji make the
and threes.
perfect cut, get to the rim, and it just wasn't there for him. It hurt me, man.
We just need the OG Anunoby dunks and threes. If you cannot dunk it, you pass it. If you if you cannot shoot a three, you pass it.
James told me that Ochai was brilliant playing off of two, and I said, "What? Who were you watching, man?"
Oh
I'd love
man.
to see it.
But I think it makes a lot of sense. You have a because the Raptors don't really have a backup point guard right now. Also, so you have a guy that one could play really well off Kelly and those pick and pops that then could turn out also plays for Abaji as well. And you throw Scotty in those also. He AJ will be able to play off motion with him and continue his advantages. I think it would be really fun. And to be honest, I think with Mitchell, I wouldn't be shocked if he's taking around 18, 19, 20, just because you're betting on these really important traits and size
Mhm.
as a processor that is hard to find. And with a draft like this, you'd probably want to bet on this than your premier on ball creator because that's not really the theme of the draft. And I haven't necessarily seen someone that I would for sure bet on. So I would take someone that if you're looking to find good NBA players that the Raptors need, he would fits the bill.
Is your preference currently at 19 Jaylon, Tristan, Khalil, and AJ? Like
Yes.
those one, two, three, four?
Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. These two, everyone, God, horny for analysis on these two. Everyone's like, these guys are very interesting. We have to talk about Dadier and Mogbo. Very different players. We're going to talk about Mogbo first. He's a 4-year junior. I believe he's going to be 23 shortly after the NBA season starts. I think his birthday is October 29th. Out of San Francisco. He's 6'8", 225. It At the drop of a hat, you will hear the name Kenneth Fareed. Like, you will hear it so quick. I've seen people compare him to Precious. I don't think he's as talented an athlete as Precious is,
Agreed.
although I do think he's a much better passer and a better passer in the context that Precious struggled in with the Raptors. Um, I will link the piece that Josh Codanero wrote about Jonathan Mogbo. It'll be in the bio or in the whatever the hell it is, the YouTube bio, whatever it is. It'll be
Best scout in
there.
the world.
Yes, best scout in the world. Read that piece. It'll be more in depth than Trey and I are going. What is your pitch for Jonathan Mogbo at 31 or 19 or whatever the hell? It's a flat draft. People go anywhere.
I think with Mogbo, if you're a team, the Raptors play really well in transition. That's Scotty's best play style. You want guys that can run, make extra passes, that can fuel that offense. Mogbo is a guy that can
Ooh,
take.
quick, actually, Da Silva, pretty good filling lanes in transition, I thought.
He is.
Just quick, yeah.
But Mogbo can grab a rebound and lead a fast break within itself. Um, the handle I think will probably tell the tale of like where his like upward trajectory can be. But at San Francisco, he was able to get to his spots really well, and he's able to hit his cutter on a baseline drive. He's able to dump off to other bigs. And the finishing is fairly well, just because he's a fairly strong guy that's able to get into the actual lane and score. Defensively, I hear like the most stuff like with Precious where you want him to switch on the wings. I don't necessarily see that in the same sense. Like Precious is just a special mover, but I think that he's going to be able to be switchy with your defense and guarded towards the end of a shot clock. He's has the strength to defend other bigs, and that provides you a massive advantage offensively if he's able to become a spot up shooter. If he's able to do that, you saw like when Precious was hitting his shots, he couldn't leave the floor because he was just so good. With Mogbo, if he's hitting threes and able to draw a closeout, he's such a good passer that it would open up your entire offense. But I think where you struggle with is if he isn't able to hit his shot, I think he becomes close to unplayable in
Mm.
in a playoff situation, just simply because those like tertiary, like interior passers that can pass big to big
Wait,
aren't as valuable.
so when you say hit his shot at the NBA level,
Yeah,
like, are you talking about like push shots? Or are you talking about a 3-point shot?
I think he's gonna need to hit a 3 point shot, which which is
Hey,
tough.
brother,
Yeah,
there's
which,
there's not a lot there.
which is tough. Like I like the interior's like shot making. I think would probably be there if he was a bit longer. I think that's just like the thing that I have, and I don't necessarily see like the processing like interior, like being able to play other secondary speeds, slow himself down, get in the lane, hit a floater like that. I think he's gonna have to be a catch and go guy,
Mm.
and if he's able to develop his shot, um, it opens up his entire game, and he's a super valuable player. Like at 31, that's worth a bet.
I wonder. So when I think about Mogbo, what I'm thinking about is like maybe you're expecting, to use some fun terminology, an 82 game player. And 82 game players are important. You got to win games to get there. Like, why would it be so bad if Mogbo, like a floor, you're expecting him to help give minutes and win you some of them during the grind of the regular season as like maybe like a eighth or ninth man who on a flex could get phased out of a playoff series, right? Depending on
Yeah,
how teams want to play it. Or if he develops in a certain way, whether we're talking about the 3-point shot you're highlighting, that is basically non existent at this point in time. He just doesn't take jumpers. Or he becomes such a utility, like a Swiss Army knife defensively,
yeah.
that he helps weigh it positively, that he can jump into like that 7 or 6 or 7 or 8, whatever it ends up being, he can jump into certain playoffs. Like at 31, that's big value,
Yeah.
especially if you're getting the winning minutes during the regular season. I think that's kind of what I'm looking at is the utility defensively if it pops
Mm,
off. Because when I watched 3 games, people, by the way, not a lot here, 3 games, I'm watching a guy who's mostly occupying the paint just because of how San Francisco wants to play. And I wonder once he's asked, because you can't guard the paint the same way at the NBA as you can
yeah.
in college. It's fundamentally quite different. Smaller floor, 3 seconds, etc., etc. Much better players. How he plays at the level while also still being able to try and take away the rim is one thing I'm really interested in seeing at the NBA level. And when I say at the level, I mean at the level of the screen because he can't play exclusively drop like he played mostly drop with San Francisco. I wonder about that. I wonder about the switchability. I don't think he's as good with his feet or his burst or his quickness as Precious. I think that's like a tough
Yeah.
comparison to make. I do wonder with the fact that he is good in transition as a finisher or pushing
Hmm.
pace. And as we've seen with Scotty, it isn't all about being the ball handler. It's like Kevin Love, it isn't all about being the guy who makes a hit head for a wide open layup. It's just the fact that it's like you grab and you find the right guy who's streaking before half. Like it's transition is really specific, but you get a lot of points out of there
Hmm.
during a game. Mogbo will help you there. I think he'll help you with transition defense. I think he'll help you on defense. Maybe not year one because of the size. I'm not sure, but I think he finds his way to it. And the passing, I think like he fits into a lot of. If you're looking at the Raptors with Scotty, with Emmanuel Quickly, with RJ, with Grady Dick, who hopefully I hope becomes a positive offensive player next year. That would be big. Those are the types of guys who should be able to carry lineups offensively,
Yep.
and Mogbo should be a guy who, as like whether it's at the elbows running actions through him, whether it's out of delay action running actions through him, or like the horns are at the elbows basically for a big anyway. He can make reads as those guys run through sets that Darko has curated for them. Like it's easy enough to run Grady off of a wide pin with Mogbo as the trigger man, as the
Hmm.
first action of a play to get the defense moving, perhaps to set up where the defense has to pull help from. That takes about 3 seconds. That's utility. It's easy to see a lot of utility here for Mogbo.
Yep.
However, it's also easy to see a guy who has basically no jump shot to speak of and is undersized.
Yeah.
Like we saw Hartenstein survive playoff minutes. I don't think he thrived necessarily, but we saw him
Yeah.
survive them. He's huge, big guy. A big swing from Mogbo might be too is like how many of those offensive rebounds are you grabbing? All
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. He's interesting though. And I
Yeah.
know dear friend Josh Cotanera gonna hot tub with that guy on Sunday. I know he's a big Mogbo fan. Any final thoughts on Mogbo?
I think another swing because he was such a on ball creator for them is how well he is as like a vertical athlete.
Hmm.
If like he's able to become the cutter that his traits say he can be and be a vertical athlete, he can grab the ball at the elbow, turn a DHO into a lob with the guys that the Raptors have, and that's super valuable. That's stuff that wins games if he's providing pressure on the rim, and that could also turn into easier passing reads for him also. So if he provides some threat, at least from 12 feet from the basket, he has a chance to like make the lineup because he can defend and also like help bench lineups win more minutes just because of his passing.
Also, just as a quick mention too, because I've seen people talk about this, and people will enjoy having this acknowledged. Khalil is a true talent, but also a guy who's dealt with like, what, do you give a shit out there? Like,
Yeah,
do you? Mogbo gives a shit. Like that
yeah,
guy is on 100 all the time. And that matters. Like that does. You can hope
yep,
that Khalil finds it. And you can also understand that Khalil may succeed without having it all the time. Some players do. They're just that talented. But Mogbo, you're probably not going to have to ever like ask for that. He will bring it. Pacome.
Pacome.
Dadiet, 18 years old, plays in the Bundesliga, ratio farm 6.5 points per game, 2.2 rebounds, zero point 0.5 assists, 50% from the field, 36% from three, 74% free throw. We talked about his fringe around 31 selection last year, Bilal Coulibaly. And then after we talked about him, I'm not saying there's any correlation here. I'm not saying there's any
Yeah.
correlation. But after we talked about him, this guy starts shooting up. And like a lot of people started coming around on Bilal. You watch his highlights, it's easy to sell yourself. You could convince yourself that that guy would go, if you watch the highlights, top 3 in like any draft. He has it all. Pacom, I don't think is like the exact same because the defensive utility is not obvious. It's not the same. However, you watch a guy who hits some catch and shoot threes, hits a couple pull up triples, and then also you're watching a guy make pretty good cuts when he sees like the weak side collapse. He's like same side cutting, which I think is a really unique style of cutting and is really important, especially if you're not just like an insane shooter. A guy who eats and finds sustenance without having the ball. There's a lot of good stuff there, but again, you watch a game and you're like, where's this guy? I don't see him. But that's like he's a young European wing who's been playing professional basketball for what, like 3 years at this point.
Yeah.
I What's your sell? Because you brought Koulibaly to my desk last year. You bring Dadier to my desk this year.
Hold on, no. Raptors Twitter. That was Samson Folk. That was not me. But I agree. Please don't come to Raptors Twitter. But I think the idea of like Dadier makes sense. Like he shot the three fairly well for his age
He has
and
a nice
his level
shot
of
too.
competition. Yeah, he hits pull ups. He can hit off of the catch coming off of screens as well. Um, I think a lot of the stuff in between the arc is.
I saw him hit one floater.
Yeah, it's super raw. It's a lot of although a lot of it, like his shot chart looks amazing, but a lot of that is him cutting off the basket, using his athleticism and getting a dunk. At the NBA level, those opportunities are few and far between, and having a player that can't do anything to inside of the basket is rough. The good part is he's 18. He's one of the youngest players within the draft. And if the elevator pitch is that we a team that we're trying to become a high level shooting team that runs off of screens, puts pressure that way, you can develop those other parts in the game because you're going to have him for 4 years and develop the other things that may take just more time and reps. Then I do see it, but my question is like defensively, it's not there either. Um, a lot of it is him using his athleticism coming in for explosive plays that pop like within highlights, but like defensively, like itself, like he wasn't a fairly good defender, and maybe some of those traits, him being fairly long, may work out for him, but it's not there on tape like right now. So you're betting on a really high level, a very raw player, and you're just hoping that your internal team can develop those traits into something. Me personally, I think the Raptors are in a place where they need winnable players. That I would probably pass, but I don't think I'm there yet. Like if the Raptors were to trade down from 31, maybe, but I'm unsure then, to be honest.
You can also, it's not that hard to buy pick 47.
Yes.
And a guy falls, you like him. People who get paid significantly more than we do for draft analysis, i.e., they work for a team, maybe they love him. They've watched every game.
Yep.
They watched him play 15 minutes every night, and they said, I saw a lot that I liked. And they know how it's going to, or they have really big visions about how it's going to fit with the Raptors.
Yeah.
It's easy to see the vision, especially offensively. A guy who doesn't get much of the ball, who has like really clean jump shot mechanics, who has hit like movement threes, who's hitting threes, who's making good reads as a cutter, dunks a lot of his finishes, and he's 18. You're like, well, there's a lot to work with here. It's not the easiest thing to build out like a mid-range game or like a handle life mid-range game. There's not a lot of passes to speak. Like it's 0.5 assists per game. Just like Cam Whitmore, I'm pretty sure averaged more than that. And I watched the game where Houston, the announcers in Houston literally expressed surprise when he made a pass. They said, "Oh, that doesn't happen often." He had more than 0.5. It's just there's not a lot to go off of, which means that there's an opportunity because what
Yeah.
scouts and what teams really like is track record. What they really like is sample size.
Mm-hmm.
It obviously everyone does. It makes it easier to say yes, a guy can do something. However, if you can see through the numbers and you watch the film and you see things that you like, you saw something happen like 6 times in a season, because that's some of what it is with Dadier, is you
Yeah.
saw it happen 6 times. You have to make that bet that it's going to happen like 2 times a game at some point in time. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that ends up being correct, and sometimes that ends up being wrong. He's very interesting, and the sell is easy, but it could get hairy. Like it could. Like Timothy Luau Cabarro is kind of that. He was that
Yeah.
type of guy,
That
and
is
he did play NBA minutes, and like you would feel more comfortable
he
justifying
was a better defender,
the.
to be honest.
He was a better defender, and he was longer.
Yeah.
He's not as good a shooter though. I don't think he
No, no,
he had a
yeah.
kind of a gross jumper. It was pretty flat if I remember, but I liked him a lot because I thought Cabarro, like I'd always get him in like an NBA 2K thing because I was like
Yes.
Cabarro is such a sick name, and he's just like long. He dunked. He developed in game to be a good shooter. It wasn't the same in real life, but yeah, it's just interesting. I'm excited for what happens with his career regardless. And like when we say who does Raptors Twitter like, Raptors Twitter has been conditioned more so than like other fan bases to like, maybe we should like the offbeat guy from
Yeah.
overseas because there's been a lot of wins there. OG doesn't necessarily count as one, but like Pascal definitely counts as that.
Yep.
And we've seen countless players come from overseas and do better than expected just because, when we say somebody in the Raptors organization likes Dadier, they've seen everything. Maybe they've flown in to go watch him or something like that. Well, not that a projected second round pick would really garner that, but sometimes people just watch more of a player in Europe and they just know more.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, North American stream is just missing out on a guy, which has happened and will continue to happen, happens less, but like maybe he's the guy. Interesting.
I'm I'm okay with being wrong on this. I think I will say with the passing stuff, although like I saw maybe 7 or 8 assists, he there 2 or 3 of them were with a live dribble and him coming off of
If you saw 7 or 8 assists, you saw almost all of them.
like
Because
some of them.
he played what, like 36 or 39 games? He had like
Yeah,
15 assists on the season.
yeah. Some of them live dribble where he's passing with his offhand, which is a cool flash. It's just hard because at 31, you're still within the range where you have a bankable, gettable player that should,
Yeah.
if it hits, be able to win minutes. That's your Andrew Nemhards. That's your Jared Allen's at that range. You're trying to hit at 31.
Jaden
It isn't like a
McDaniels,
swing.
Desmond Bain.
Oi, oi.
So I have a question for you. And I'm not doing this to
Yeah.
like, I don't, as I've said before, I haven't seen very much of Dadier. It's a hypothetical conversation
Yeah.
around what little you see. But I have a question just because I want to be funny. How many times in a pickup game for a guy who's like not getting much of the ball, you're not seeing much there? How many times in a pickup game would you have to see a guy make like a offhand live dribble pass before you believed it?
I won.
Just once, and
Just
you'd be like, he has that?
Just in a pickup game,
Yeah.
if someone did an offhand pass just once, I would say this guy's a savant. I see the average guy grab the ball, turn his back, dump off pass, and I yell Jokic.
He's different. Yeah. Okay. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. Just want to get an idea of it. We will be back to talk about more. I don't know when exactly. It's a
Yeah.
long time until the draft happens. Still, we still got time. We'll be back.
Yeah.
We will for our friend. We will be talking about Cam Spencer. Relax, but also that video you share of Cam Spencer's defense, and you keep thinking it's good. His feet are so slow in that, man. It's not like he's
Yeah.
like it's slow. I like Cam Spencer. I'm excited to talk about him. Stop
Modern
sharing that
Carlisle.
clip. Stop sharing that clip. It's bad feet.
Um,
Bad feet.
what do you think about the draft being 2 days? I feel like they ruined like one of the best days of the NBA.
I don't like. I thought that Raptors Republic was going to be able to have a draft party because 19 and 31. Now, there's no way. You can't have a draft party for 19. Yeah, like
Yeah.
19 and 31, sure. If it had been like 6, imagine they don't trade for Olenek and Ochai. It's like 6, 19, 28,
Yeah.
31. Then you could do something, but like 19, and it's like, come back for day 2. No. Well, you and I will be live streaming. We
Yeah.
should live stream from the same spot, though. We'll have to find a location. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. But, yeah, any thoughts before we get out of here? Like, I don't like it anyway. Yeah. It's not the NFL. Like, then you don't have the gas for that.
Yeah, the NFL is obviously 3 days, but there's 7 rounds and there's 200 players, so it makes sense.
Alfred Morris went round 7 and he led the league in rushing his rookie season. So that's not happening in the NBA.
No, yeah, it's not as obvious. Like the draft is like one of the best days of the. We have our RR party. I'm with the fellas. We're drafting a new star. It just takes the air out of things. I think, but at 31, I'm interested like how day 2 looks like. If the Raptors trade down, if they buy a player with the pick, it becomes extremely valuable just because you have almost 24 hours to reevaluate your board and figure out from there. So they might be able to exploit like a new twist that no one has ever been prepared for.
Yeah. With the newfound leverage of day 2, somehow they've traded Bruce Brown for Lauri Markkanen. Teams, they just kept up in the ante. They had extra time on the clock, changed everything.
They're sickos like Nabil. If the Raptors trade 31 for 48 and a 25 second round pick, they're gonna be fist pumping.
Messiah's back. Yeah, that sounds about right. All right, well, we'll leave it there. We'll talk about some more players in the future. I will presumably talk to some other scouts, podcasts, etc. All right, everybody. From myself and Trey, thank you for tuning in. And yeah, remember, comment if I've been lazy. And tell Trey he looks sophisticated, please.
Please, I'm begging.
Please. Okay, whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.